Good evening, family. Welcome back. Happy Monday on this. If you're in the Northeast, anyway, as Mr. Blair pointed out to me, snowy day. It's been quite a day actually. We haven't had this much snow in quite a while. Thank you all so much for tuning in with us. We're very excited to have the aforementioned Mr. Keiron Blair from Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools and friend of the program, President Brown from the Baltimore Teachers Union. So excited to have her back. Of course, the face of the franchise, Mr. Tyrone Barnwell, is in the house as always. Family, thank you all so much for joining us. Here is the connection question. We're going to have to make an exemption for Mr. Blair because he was telling us that he lives in the beautiful, warm city of Atlanta. So this question doesn't apply. So I have to rephrase for Mr. Blair. But for everybody else in Maryland, at least in the Northeast, what do you like to do on a snowy day? What do you like to do on a snowy day? For Mr. Blair, if there was snow around you, that's for your question. What would you do? President Brown, we will start with you. What do you like to do on a snowy day?
Well, what I would like to do is have someone drive me to the movie theater so I can watch movies. What I actually do is still work.
And we know that is very true. You are always working. We need to talk to BTU, some of your lieutenants, and have you get out and get to the movie. Somebody need to lift you to the movie, at least for one day. You deserve that. Um, I will go as Mr. Blair. Maybe give you a little bit of time to think about what you would do if snow was in your vicinity, which it is not. I love, especially when I was younger, to go sledding. That was just me and my friends, just anything. It didn't have to even be an actual sled. Matter of fact, we didn't have. I don't think we even had actual sleds for quite a while. So anything that would get us down the hill was my favorite thing to do. Still is probably if I had a chance to do it nowadays. All right, Mr. Blair, it's gonna be.
While I live in Atlanta, I live in the South. I lived in Chicago for a while, so when it snowed, but I like to be inside. I want to be cozy. I want the heat. Although in Chicago you didn't control your heat, it was these central heating panels. But I like the heat high. I like blankets. I just want to be warm. And in a pre-COVIDity good company. Yeah.
All right, okay, I'll take that. I think a lot of people are right on line with you. Um, most certainly. And let's see, Brother Tyrone, you think you're ready for yours after you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I jump it now. So honestly, I like to I love snow. First of all, I do. I think it is so beautiful. What I don't like is little phony snow though, right? Where you don't actually get to shut down and stay home. Like it's so annoying. I love the snow when it's like we gotta shut down for a day, actually be home. And so like Diamonte said, I have to go to the movies. That is when I can catch up on my movies at home or, shows that I might DVR and stuff and just, kind of sit and relax. The ironic thing about now is because we're in this current climate of COVID and stuff, we're already working from home. So it wasn't the same today. It was still working from home. You know what I mean? Like, so it wasn't as relaxing as a normal snow day will be. But nonetheless, it was still okay. The kids were still doing schoolwork for most of the day. They got out early today, but it was, I don't know. So it wasn't the regular stuff. But interesting nonetheless. And the only other thing that I will say though, as I've gotten older and got this little back issue, I do not like shoveling anymore. I used to have fun. Let me tell you, my little front is not that big, but my back, and I have to figure out a way to do for my dogs. They do not like the snow. And so this has been an interesting ride with this snow now. But yeah, y'all just relax and hot cup of cocoa, and you can just sit back and almost do nothing. It's the best when we can do that.
All right. Appreciate that, Brother Tyrone. Mr. Blair and President Brown, I know you may recall this, but this is new for you, Mr. Blair. If we hear you dropping some nuggets of wisdom, we have a little symbol that we do like this, and if it's real good, we pour all the nuggets out. So don't be alarmed if you see me or Tyrone making that gesture. Also, our family that is watching us may say nuggets and so forth, and give you respect and props for the things that you say. And family, we want to know, Tyrone wants to know, as he's scrolling to allow you all in, what is your favorite thing to do on a snowy day? All right, let's get down to what we're here to talk about, and that is education, which is what we normally do. We have to talk about education. We don't, as much as it seems like sometimes, Tyrone, that we're in a bubble here in Baltimore City, we are fact and part of the national educational landscape, as we well know. And some of the things we kind of escape some of those national policies, and some of the things sometimes we do not. And so today, that is what the focus of our conversation is going to be about. Mr. Blair, introduce yourself to the family. Tell us what you do, and also we'll start after that talking to you about the role of the Secretary of Education.
All right. Thank you for having me. My name is Keiron Blair. I'm the National Director of the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools. AROS brings together parents and organizations that organize parents, or Journey for Justice, the Center for Popular Democracy, Gamaliel. We bring together unions that represent educators, education professionals, and school staff. So the Service Employees International Union, the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers. We also have member groups that organize young people, the Alliance for Educational Justice. We have some philanthropy at the table, so the Schott Foundation. We have research groups at the table, EJ Rock out of New York. We have legal and civil rights group, the Advancement Project. So we have 10 national groups that make up the Alliance. We've been around for about 5 or 6 years. And our work moves on, at this point, maybe 2 levels. One, so federal issues, federal policy. So in the previous administration, that was a little bit tighter, but we move around shaping the national narrative. We run campaigns at the federal level that advance equity, racial justice, parent engagement, pushing back against privatization, expanding community schools, and getting well-needed resources to school districts around the country. So that's the first piece. The second piece is that we build and support coalitions of parents, educators, students, and school staff at the local level. We have about 25 or so coalitions in existence, and we're currently working to build a number of others. And so the work is organizing, building power to make change at the federal and state levels. And what makes us unique is that we are aligned around a set of issues that we think mean a lot to parents, educators, education professionals, school staff, and young people. And while there are lots of education-related issues, our niche is to identify those particular connection points and run campaigns that we think can make change at any of those levels.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Just a follow-up, you talked about the Alliance to Reclaim Schools being tied into, or at least pushing against some of those national policies and trying to create change. What does the Secretary of Education do? We hear about the position. We know it's a cabinet. It's an appointed position. But can you explain to our audience what exactly do they have? What is their purview?
Yeah, so I think the first piece is that they are the chief or primary officer of the Department of Education. And the Department of Education, hundreds, if not thousands of people who are all concerned about, connected to how we run the nation's school system. And that is from K through higher ed. And the secretary has purview over all of those policies and leads a department that is interested in the government or the governance of K through higher ed education around the country. It is a critical role. I'm an immigrant from Jamaica. And one of the things that, people unite around is that whether, US born or immigrant, documented or not, Black, white, wherever you fit, there is general agreement on the role of education and the role of schools, both as critical to our democracy as a whole, but also critical to how and whether or not and to what extent people get a fair shot at life in this country. And so the person who leads the department for the next 4 years will have lots of implication for how our lives unfold, both individually, but also collectively.
And to that end, before we go to President Brown, what would you say is the legacy of outgoing Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos? Because I know people such as yourself, President Brown, Tyrone, have their eyes on what she's been doing with education while she was while she was the head of education. But what would you say her legacy is before we even think about Mr. Cardona?
What's interesting, and I give a shout out to one of my friends on the AROS coordinating committee, Jonathan Stith, who leads the Alliance for Educational Justice. And we were having this conversation. And one of the things he said, which I think is a really, really brilliant analysis, is that he has said, and I agree, the legacy of DeVos is really one of failure. That when you think about what both Trump and DeVos came to office to do in general, but also in particular related to public education, and DeVos said she wanted to dismantle in lots of ways public education. She wanted to expand privatization, expand charters. And while those attempts were made, and we had fortified ourselves in many ways, and we saw the uprisings of educators around the country, her agenda of pushing privatization, pushing charterization, defunding public schools, getting Black educators to leave the profession, while some of that happened, it was largely our assessment that she failed. And while that was good for us, it was also, or is also, demonstrative of the general failure of the Trump administration. And so for me, it is a legacy of failure. And it is a legacy of attempting things that we organized against and didn't want, but that she was unable or incapable of delivering. Good for us. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Blair. And I will be coming back to ask you about incoming Secretary Cardona. We will go over to our esteemed BTU President, Brown. So, President Brown, tell us about the role of the state superintendent, in this case, of course, Dr. Keiron Salmon. What is her impact, right now in state education, and not only her impact in and of herself, but the role of the superintendent?
Okay, I would say that the role of any state superintendent is to oversee federal education programs. Another one would be to lead implementation of policies, educational policies specifically. And also now Dr. Salmon actually is not just the superintendent, the state superintendent, she also serves as the secretary treasurer on the Maryland State Department on the Maryland State Board of Education. So that's important to note as well. So she also has a voice there, not just her, but in Maryland, the state superintendent serves as the secretary and treasurer of the Maryland State Board of Education. Also, the state superintendent is responsible for the administration of the Maryland State Department of Education. And I would say Dr. Salmon, specifically the role that she plays here in Maryland is to oversee educational policies that happen in the state of Maryland, education programs that are in the state of Maryland, and to have a voice on our state school board. And as you all have been seeing lately, one of the things that are most highlighted is her obligation to provide guidance to local districts.
Thank you, President Brown. I have a follow-up for you. Before we go to that, though, Brother Tyrone, we have any of the audience talking about what they do on snow days, or any big ups for our guests, or questions or comments for our guests before we go back to President Brown?
So, of course, as always, welcome everyone who's watching and joining us. We appreciate you for being here. President Brown shows up and, we get these numbers. Continue to share the live and tap the screen. You all welcome Yvette, Joanne, my mom Heidi, Darlene, Keegan Montgomery, Barbara Melbourne. Just to name a few. Thank you all. Continue to comment extra questions. I am trying to get clarification for one question. And I believe because brother Mr. Blair shared that he's with AROS, I believe one of the questions is directed towards him and wanting to know if AROS could help with school buildings here, and the condition of school buildings, and instead of just being pushed out of one decrepit building into another, is there a way that AROS can help to fix that? Am I correct, Heidi? I definitely believe so that is what she's asking. For him saying that program, so we can access that directly towards. Yep, I am correct. She just commented. So that's the question for Keiron. Keep your questions and comments coming in. We did have someone say that they'd like to drink hot cocoa and do absolutely nothing on snow days. Someone else said they remember being able to make money on snow days and shoveling. And they think that that's what people should be out doing now, because we don't have a lot of it going on. Please come by my house. But yeah, that's what we have. Shay John, continue to tell us what it is that you do on snow days as brother Keiron takes that question.
Sure. Mr. Blair?
Oh, you want me to? So in terms of individual school buildings, the nature of our work isn't designed as such, so you have, on the obviously we have the president of the teachers union. So we work with local parent groups and teachers union in coalition. And then those local folks come up with usually issues that have, even if they have one locality, there is something sort of citywide or statewide about the kinds of campaigns that we take on. So in general, it is entirely possible that an AROS table in Baltimore and Maryland could take on a fight around school resourcing and school buildings designed to ensure that we have funds and that buildings are clean and that sort of stuff. But in terms of AROS directing that campaign, that isn't sort of how our work rolls out.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. I just wanted to go ahead. I'm sorry, Brother Tyrone. Matter of fact, I'm just gonna go ahead back to you, William, and go, y'all. I am not ignoring y'all questions, but because we do have a specific topic, we want to be able to get to that. President Brown is here, and we have questions coming in about other teacher issues and stuff right now. So we get a little to get in to stuff and let that go. Thank you all for reaching out though. But because we are being educated on, the Secretary of State and what's going on, I will ask that just right now, that we let them explain and educate us on that, and that we ask around that, because some of your questions could possibly go towards that and what the power that they have in these positions to make some things happen also. So. See, Tyrone, this is why President Brown can't get to the movies. You understand what I'm saying? This is why she come, this is why she can't go to the movies. How could she go? How could she go to the movies?
Always working.
Not gonna be able to go. Y'all asking her questions, Off topic, of course, not off topic at all. I'm just joking, just playing with you all. And of course, President Brown would answer every question she could in this time. But President Brown, going to you, I wanted to talk about how can you explain for our families that's watching how some of those state policies directly impact our students in Baltimore City. One thing that kind of reminds me of, and I don't want to lead us down this road too far, but Dr. Salmons a few months ago talking about teachers should be one of the first folks that got vaccinated in order to enter schools. And then you see what's going on currently. You don't have to touch on that, but in other areas and other arenas, how does the policy that she sets at the top affect our students and our teachers?
Well, for example, firstly, the state superintendent doesn't set policies. Remember, they execute policies. The board sets policies and the Maryland state legislature sets policies. And one policy that many people are familiar with is the blueprint, the Keiron legislation. That is a piece of legislation that's on the state level, but the monies that come from that legislation, if we are able to override it, will trickle down into local school districts. For Baltimore specifically, I would say one of the ways that we should see that money impact us is an expansion of pre-K. We all know here in Baltimore City, we don't have a lot of pre-K slots. And we try to leverage that with Head Start, which is now also declining, I believe. So being able to increase pre-K slots, I think would be very helpful. Another example is the legislator has to approve any changes in the school board structure. So if many advocates, including myself, have been fighting for a majority hybrid elected school board. But in order to make that happen, the Maryland state legislator has to pass a policy that changes the structure of the school board. And right now, Baltimore City is the only school district that does not have a majority hybrid elected school board. And another example is the ex-felon voting rights bill that was passed on a state level. But now, if you, once you are released from jail or prison, you can vote. And before, you had to wait until you were off of probation in order to vote. And some people don't realize that sometimes you can be on probation for like 25 years. However, you're still expected to pay taxes and contribute like any other citizen without any representation. So now in Maryland, as soon as you're released, you can vote. And as you all know, we have many ex-offenders in the city of Baltimore. So now that people that have been formerly incarcerated can vote, that could potentially change what voters look like in Baltimore City if those people that are formerly incarcerated really take on that opportunity or challenge to make that shift. And so those are a few ways that policies trickle down to the city level, and three that are specific to Maryland and Baltimore City.
Thank you, President Brown. So knowledgeable, folks. I know that, President Brown is just, most people see her just as the straight warrior, but with, all of that knowledge, it's good to understand and hear and glean from her on other subjects other than just, the direct rights of the teacher, which we love how she does and what she does in that area. Mr. Blair, I wanted to come back to you, speaking about incoming Secretary Cardona. I would imagine that your organizations and those allied to your cause are going to have the same push on any Secretary of Education. But what should we expect from incoming Director Cardona?
So I appreciate Madam President for sort of this hint around, talking about being a warrior, being an advocate, because for me, that is a good question, but for me, the real question as an organizer, and the thing I say to people is, I'm actually less interested in what they want to do. The role, as you know, caveat, I'm a big fan of unions, right? But one of the things that unions teach us, and I'm a fan of organizing, I am an organizer, is that we must bend the world in our favor, in our direction. That is our responsibility. And so I think we have good indications. Angela Davis said this best when talking about the elections and why we should get involved, about creating the better terrains of struggle, right? So I think that Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos and the others connected to them made a lot of things that we wanted even more difficult. And a lot of us got involved in the election in order to create a more positive terrain upon which we could move our agenda. We have some indications from, incoming secretary, or rather the secretary designee, as he's now called, that we will see support for, public education. We will see support for public school educators. We will see support for unions. We will see support for expanding Title I. We will see greater or accountability for the charter industry. But that is all based on previous, right? We will see some support given President Biden's commitment to community schools. We'll see some expansion around resources for community schools. That's what everything up to this moment has told us. Now, people get in office, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so their history is good. But what we know is that we must organize to make them deliver on the promises and on the things that we care about. It is not the time to let up on the gas. It is not the time to go soft. We do not, I don't, while I respect, and again, I feel better about the current administration, I don't consider them our friend. Right? They are in power, and power must be held accountable, and demands must be made of those who are in power. And so what we will demand is, we will demand the full funding of Title I. We will demand support for Black educators. We will demand the safe and equitable reopening of schools. We will demand an end to the expansion of the charter movement. We will demand investment in community schools. We will demand a focus on equity and racial justice. What he wants to give us is up to us, right? We're going to show up, we're going to call, we're going to propose legislation. We're going to, when it's safe to be out in the streets, we're going to be out in the streets demanding those things and bending the political terrain in our favor. And again, I think we are hopeful that President Biden, First Lady Joe Biden, incoming secretary, there is a lot that says that we're going to have, again, a better terrain to sort of have this struggle on. But I'm not convinced that power is simply going to roll over and pay and give educators what they deserve just because it's Monday. Like I'm not convinced, nor do I believe that parents and the demands that parents have long had are going to be met simply because we inaugurated a new president. We must shape the world in our favor and in our direction through organizing and taking action. And that is what we intend to do.
Mr. Blair, I am very, very happy that you said that. And I know some people may have something to say about what I'm about to say, but with the election of President Biden and Vice President Harris, there was such sheer joy and dancing in the streets that I was afraid that people thought that simply by the virtue of the fact that they are in office, many of the struggles that we have in our school systems and in other aspects of our society would automatically change course.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad to hear you say that just because we have new folks elected doesn't mean, like you said, the voting I like the way you phrased that, changes the terrain, makes the terrain easier. But what you're saying is, Mr. Blair, there is still much to fight for, struggle for, press, and push on the national level. So thank you for that. President Brown, you know, to you, and I know that you're in the same mindset of Mr. Blair. How do parents influence our local school board? How do parents influence those at the state level as well?
Well, one way parents can actually apply to be on the school board, that would be awesome. They could also help other people apply to be on the school board. They can attend, make certain that the public comment section of the school board is always filled. We have this, you know, we've been challenging the school board to increase access to community and constituents, but we, at the same time, we want to make certain that we're capitalizing on the access that's already there. So it would be great if we could always make certain that all 10 public comment slots are full at all times. Parents can join a parent community advisory board, which has even more access to the school board. I believe the school board has to present policies to this body of parents and community members prior to being able to propose it prior to being able to vote on it, I believe. Also, as far as being involved in state policy, parents can create policy. I mean, policy isn't drafted most of the time by legislators sitting at their desks. They have way too much stuff to do. Policy is crafted by people like us. And that doesn't mean you have to know the language or any of that. You just need to find your legislator, your senator, your delegate, and ask them to sponsor your idea. And they'll write the language and all of those things. And also parents can champion policy. And that means once you have a sponsor and there's a bill, you can be the one making certain that there's a hearing, making certain it's written and verbal testimony, making certain that the committee votes the way you need them to vote. So parents can do a plethora of things to impact policy.
Wow, thank you, President Brown. You know what, I mean, Tyrone, we are really, we're having a master class here this evening. National, you know, I want to say politics, but national policies in terms of education and how people can get involved, and of course, state and local. And I'm just, I'm happy to be here. I'm finding myself getting too wrapped up in the answers and, you know, not facilitating. Tyrone, from our family, what do we got? You gotta unmute yourself, brother. What you trying to be like me?
I'm just talking like I know to hear me. So first, we have a question. It's a few questions actually. And that is the Maryland superintendent involved in the school board decision, or is it just the legislator? Is one question. Then also with that is, has she made public her stance? And then why does the state get to decide about the structure of our school board when it's a Baltimore issue?
The Maryland State Superintendent does not sit on a state legislature, but she does sit on the Maryland State School Board. She does not sit on the Baltimore City School Board. Now, her public stance so far has been that schools need to reopen by March 1st. And that's pretty much her public stance. And then the last thing about the why is the state responsible for changing the structure of the school board versus local government? I don't know the answer to that question. I would have to do more research and understand why that is so. I would suspect it's because the state has some type of jurisdiction over all local education agencies, since they all fall under the Maryland State Department of Education. But don't quote me on that answer because I honestly don't know.
Okay, got you there. And Tim say every Baltimore City public school should have a parent review board of some sort. Absolutely. And so to those, I see another comment that say that they don't listen to us parents. And the ones that do, it's harder on them. So Heidi, I mean, I've experienced that, but I've also experienced where parents have had successes and they do listen to us. And it's really about organizing. I see you made a comment that you were the only one fighting for 17 years on getting your school rebuilt. And I get that's your passion, but if you were to organize other parents and get other parents behind you with that, then I think you would begin to see a movement. It's power in numbers. So when there's only you as an individual going and saying this needs to be done, they're looking like you're the only one complaining about this. Where's the other people that find this as an issue, right? So, but we can talk later on. I would definitely be willing to help and work. Maybe you can come and join TDP and become a school action team at your school, getting a fellowship. And that's something that you and, other parents can begin to organize around and make happen there. Then the other question also is there, I'm sorry, if there, let me get to the right part. Can either of these positions that we're talking of on, state level and federal level, can either of these positions be helpful to us right now as schools try to vaccinate and reopen?
That's a great question. Mr. Blair.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, right? I'm hesitant to make this reference, but I will absolutely say, Tyrone, I appreciate what you just said around, I think a lot of times people go from, I have a problem, to then I'm going to take action. And so for 20 years, you're the person standing on the corner with a sign and you're like, I'm taking action, but it is not demands that make change, right? Power responds to power. And for me, power isn't just in numbers, power is numbers, right? That the two, in a democracy, the two are synonymous. I appreciate the encouragement to say, hey, if there's a problem in your school or your community, your school district, don't just take action, but go talk to 5, 10, 20 other people or connect with groups that already exist. I know a little bit about Baltimore, and like a lot of, these urban cities, there's lots of organizing happening. So usually in a place like Baltimore, if you think about it, there's somebody doing it, somebody organizing around it. I said that as a segue to soften my next comment. One of the things, if anything, that I took from the previous administration is the ways in which whatever the role was, sort of, it didn't matter. It's like, protocol be damned, I'm going to do what I want to do because I have the power to do it. And so when I organize people to make demands of elected officials or appointed officials, my question isn't what they can or usually do. For me, in this sort of post-Trump era, it is now about what we want you to do, and you're going to do it and find out how to do it. And so the answer is absolutely yes. And we think about the reopening of schools, both from a job description standpoint. The Secretary of Education will have a lot to say about how schools reopen and the resources they need and how we move vaccination. But also from an imaginative standpoint, even if he said, oh, that's not my job, what I'm encouraging our people to do is to demand that it become his job, right? Because if you are in a public role in this moment, you cannot not have a position on how schools reopen, on how people get vaccinated. Like, you just can't. This is a global crisis for a reason. So everybody is caught up in it in one way or the other. And so from where I'm sitting, yes, the secretary will both have a definitional, like, you are leading the Department of Education, you got to have something to say. And even if he attempts to step back from that, we're going to push to say, no, you have to have a position, because we're trusting you to lead the Department of Education.
Interestingly, sorry to cut in, Tyrone, but interestingly, Mr. Blair, the state is right in line with, the Secretary of Education on the federal level, which of course, President Biden, that was one of his main first 100 days of his agenda, is to get schools reopened. So we can't lose sight of that. I think some people lose sight that was one of the main things on President Biden's agenda. So, all they say is safely. And so, we can see the trickle down and states doing it the way they want to do it, but all of them are concerned with just reopen. Quick follow-up for you before Tyrone jumps back in here. How do President Brown talked about parental impact on the system from the state perspective and from our fair cities perspective. How do parents impact the federal educational system? Again, with organizations such as yours, what would you say?
I think whether it's state or whether it's city or it's state or it's federal, the answer that both President Brown and Tyrone offered around organizing, that is the answer. Organizing is the answer. Imagination is the answer. America has lots of problems. I am not an America apologist. I am deeply critical of this, my fair country. But one of the things that America allows for, again, is a kind of imagination in this sort of democracy. And so parents can organize, parents can reach out to their members of Congress and work on legislation. Parents can show up to legislators' offices and make demands. And how the world reopens, parents can go to Washington, D.C. and lobby and take action. But again, what matters is not the strength or the loudness or even the accuracy of the demand. What matters is the power that we have built. And so groups like the Center for Popular Democracy, the Journey for Justice Alliance, and other parent-led entities have demonstrated that parents are out here moving the needle. And as G2 Brown, one of our formidable leaders, often says, parents, and particularly Black parents, have been the tip of the spear when it comes to moving education justice, right? It is parents who have been decrying not just charter schools, but the charter industry, right? It is parents who've said, what's going on with it's parents who have, been leading the debate around the school to prison pipeline. It is parents who've been demanding that educators be paid well, right? So that we can keep good people in the classroom. So parents have done a lot to shape the national landscape and continue to do so. And those who are listening are invited to join that broader parent movement to drive an agenda that speaks to the interests of parents around the country.
Thank you for that, Mr. Blair. Tyrone, anything else from our audience? Any other questions or comments for our esteemed guests here?
I'll mute again. let me see. It just, so first, as I like to acknowledge this to Brother Blair and President Brown, of course, thank yous and nuggets. We all, let folks know that they appreciate the information that you are given. And so we got a lot of, okay, nices, okay, go on, brother, teach, like we got a lot of that stuff coming on and comments that are coming. So we really appreciate, those comments. If you do have questions, we have a few minutes left with them, not much, so do come with your questions and your comments. And also, just a reminder, it is pinned here that so as we talk about parents and what you all can do and everything like that, please sign the BTU petition on a safe reopening. If you agree that the districts follows the reopening plans that includes certain things, city school staff being fully vaccinated, ventilation upgrades, minimum public health metrics must be met, and a robust, reliable, and proactive testing program for staff and students. Just to kind of sum stuff up, it is there. The link, we have it posted. So those who are watching, not only sign and click the link, but share it to your networks and put it out there. Before we go to them, this is the BTUs, and let's also on Thursday, we also talked about high school students who also came up with their demands and spoke about reopening and what needs to take place. So we need to get behind and support. That's something that parents can do right now, that you ain't got to go outside in the cold, but you can do it home from the snow. You can sign the petition now. Thank you.
Tyrone, I was just going to say, you may be able to get away with not knowing what to do and how to do it, but not if you watch this show. Not if you watch this show. There's no way you can say that you watch this program and I don't know what to do. I don't know who to contact. I don't know what they be talking. No, not here.
We gonna tell you.
That's right. Absolutely. And President Brown is just doing something that Mr. Blair, you mentioned, you took me back, Mr. Blair, because you said tip of the spear. So I'm thinking ANC, I'm thinking President Mandela, but, President Brown is, and what she is doing. And one of those bullet points is talking about, we talk about the human, and I know this is off script, but I'm gonna say it anyway, the pre-existing conditions of humans. And Baltimore City's buildings, Tyrone, had pre-existing conditions prior to COVID. The buildings were sick before they got COVID. Now they got COVID. So, I love the fact that is on what she is trying to do and call attention to, because all of these things, these struggles, to Mr. Blair's point, are not new. They have been here, since the inception of this country, where we are Black and brown and poor are concerned. So go ahead, put your finger up, and I'm gonna be quiet.
Because this came, and I do want to mention with this question also, as I mentioned, the students also mentioned this, so this is serious. They talked about testing and having to deal with testing during the pandemic, but the question is, who should we reach out to about canceling standardized testing this year? When I go back in person, the majority of the next couple months will be spent doing WIDA testing, which means not a lot of teaching. So President Brown, I know you here and know if you would, like to tell them exactly who to go to. And like I said, also mentioning this is coming from a parent, but let's also acknowledge that students themselves are even saying that during this time, testing should not be a priority when they're already dealing with the stresses of what's going on with, COVID and trying to return to school and needing to be taught.
So I'm glad you made that connection, Tyrone, because I would say first that parents should definitely be connected to the student organizers of the student strike, because one of their demands is that testing be not happen because they feel like they're being forced to go back into buildings just to take the test. Some people may not know that for some assessments like WIDA, and I think MCAT, it has to be done in person. And so, these dates aren't like out of nowhere, from like now until the end of the school year is testing time. And I would also say that this parent should target Dr. Salmon, because the state would be responsible for saying that we're not going to move forward with standardized tests that are on a state level. That's what actually happened last spring when we first shut down. We didn't move forward with testing. But people should also know that because our district, like many school districts, limit much of their data and decision making to standardized test data, that now it's like every decision they make is a challenge because they don't have the data. And so, I don't know all of the implications of that, but standardized testing is definitely something that will continue to be pushed, and it's going to take a full force of organized people to stop it, because it's a lot of money, a lot of profit in standardized testing. And my dad once told me, be careful when you come in between somebody and their money.
Nuggets, yeah, that's buckets and nuggets coming from Dad. But I'm glad you said that, President Brown, because I heard, oh my God, I wish I could quote the source, but someone said that the governor's date of March 1st was arbitrary. Mm-hmm. And you're saying it's not arbitrary. You're saying it is directly connected to the fact that this is testing season.
You got to look at the testing schedule yourself, but I mean.
I like the president.
And yeah, but the other part to that also, and me and someone else was having a conversation about this, is look at the grades that they are targeted, and also to go back, who have to be the ones who take these tests. So all grades are not being targeted right now to go back. They're looking at 9th, 12th graders and elementary school kids who are responsible for taking these tests that are coming up during this season. So
I align with that, and we just signed on to a letter and a campaign that the Network for Public Education is leading, to call for, again, either the ending or the suspending of tests from a federal standpoint. So that letter was sent to, again, hopefully the person who will become the next Secretary of Education, and to President Biden, to say, hey, we need some federal intervention here, connected to the fact that we know that testing is often about money and not actually about assessing whether or not and to what extent people are learning, right? Like when I talk to educators and parents and school staff, nobody is against assessment. Nobody's against like helping to determine our children learning, right? And how can we improve our craft of teaching? But so much, the vast majority of the tests that we are made to either proctor or sit for don't really get at learning and teaching. And so we know that they are, for educational purposes, they are often unnecessary to determine are people learning and is good teaching happening.
Wow,
it's a lot of stuff I could say.
It's a lot.
But I'm not going to go there about the testing part, because we know they're also not culturally. Just go on, Brother William, and y'all, and do y'all thing. Let me mute myself again.
No, I'm the same, Tyrone. Never had Mr. Blair on. So glad to have Mr. Blair on. He's, just lighting a fire. Of course, President Brown always brings it when she comes at knowledge and information, and that warrior spirit push, which she's doing to enhance our schools with her work as the helm of the union, Baltimore Teachers Union. Mr. Blair, final thoughts about that push, about that work. What would you leave our audience with? And again, we're so honored to have you on to talk about the work that you really haven't talked about it in terms of what I do. You've talked about in terms of what we should do as a community, and I do appreciate that as well.
So, I know that there is organizing happening in Baltimore. We've been working with the union and with parents to build a table. So if folks are around, if you can't join the union, join a parent group. If you're a student, join a student group, get involved, get organized. Let's build power to change both Baltimore, Maryland, and then at the federal level, our website is reclaimourschools.org. And again, the way we are structured is that we house coalitions. So that's why I'm always starting local, get connected to the local work, and that local work feeds into our national fight. I think one of the beauties of the current age we're in is that all of us, social media has democratized how we share and get information. So I would also encourage folks to share what they know, push people into organizing, speak up, and use your platform that you have in order to advance the cause of justice and fairness. So.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. President Brown, final thoughts.
I would just say, don't quit. If you feel like you're not being heard or things are getting too difficult, just go get more people and come back with more people and say it again and say it louder. And as simple as it sounds, it's something I've used for probably the past 2 decades, and it's worked like a charm for me. So, either you know it works, and if you don't know it works, try it. See if it works for you.
Thank you. And President Brown, I'm assuming some of your lieutenants and your close associates in your inner circle are watching. And so I'm gonna say it directly to them, please make sure this fine warrior of ours gets a chance to go to the movies. Please call her Lyft, call her Uber, please. Y'all take the helm for a couple of days. Please let him go watch. You just want to watch. It's a Denzel film that's out right now. I can't wait to watch it myself. Jared Leto's in it and everything. Can't wait to watch it. Let Ms. President Brown go watch a film. Tyrone, final thoughts.
I'll take her. Yeah, I'll take her. Listen, I love when people speak truth about what's going on. So I do have to call out a Keegan Montgomery, who watches and who is one of our white supporters. And we thank you, and I made that mentioned for a reason, not to call out her race, but because of, she said, not to mention that these standardized tests are biased towards middle and upper class white test takers. Okay, so I absolutely, I love when people call out the truth and say what it is. So I appreciate that and thank you for that. But anyway, piggybacking off of what President Brown says, it was the same thing with me. Go and get some other people. If y'all need help finding people that find parents who are interested, contact TDP. We have some, as I said, we have school action teams, but if you want to get involved, reach out to us. And catch us, as always, catch us on Thursdays at Parent Chat. On Thursdays at Tyrone's house with me, and parents come and talk about the issues in this space. So if you do have issues as parents and you just want to talk and think through how we as parents can continue to make these movements and connect with other parents, that's what that space is for. So please join us on Thursdays. And of course, back here, and go to the school board meeting this week, y'all. Whenever there's a school board meeting, again, like President Brown said, be there, share your testimony, be there. Last week, we shared with you even a way that you can share testimony for legislators when they're in session and talking about laws. Always be present, however we can. I'm sorry, school board meeting is next week, not this week. I jumped ahead. However, be there. Look, we'll post it. We'll put the information out there for you all. And a little piggyback, yes. Y'all make sure Brown gets to the movies, but y'all, when we have, and this is not, Brown is one of them, but there are a couple other great leaders that we do have out there. Support them, continue to make sure that they are taking care of themselves as well, right? Because we need them to be good so that they can continue to lead for us in ways that we need led. All right.
Yes, thank you. That's all. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Keiron Blair of Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools. And I love that. Tip of the spear for you, sir. Tip of the spear for President Brown, Baltimore Teachers Union, the good brother Tyrone. And thank you, Rebecca, for producing this show. It's time to go, Tyrone. So we'll see everybody Thursday at Tyrone's house. Am I right or wrong? Are you eating? You gonna eat before we even get off the family? Thank you so much. Join us next Monday. But before you do, stop by Tyrone's house on Thursday. Peace, y'all. Take good care.